Hey there guys, Erica here from Hive49RC. Hope y'all are doing well. Now that I have a motor lathe, as you know, there is one motor in particular that I would like to service, and that is this Integy lathe motor. I bought this quite a darn while ago, and being the young whippersnapper that I was, I smoked it on my first run because my truck was super heavy, and I didn't really understand motors that well. So this thing's been in a couple trucks since. It's very dirty, definitely needs the calm cut and a thorough cleaning, so I thought that's what we would work on today. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to want to do before I start working on this motor and taking it apart is I want to check the spring tension of each of the springs on either side, because I know that they can be different. So I'm going to use a spring checker tool here. It has numbers on the side of it, and you put it against the spring at the end and you just push on it until the spring lifts off its stop. Alright, so both sides are a 4 after measuring it, so that means I don't necessarily have to pay attention to which side the springs came off of when I take it apart. I've got my lathe toolbox here in the background, so let's go ahead and start taking this apart. I'm going to start by pulling the springs off and then removing the end bell. Springs, let's see here. I'm going to keep track just for the heck of it. Just going to put a little plus and a minus up on my bench here. So this one was the positive side, this was the negative side. Alright. Now I'm also going to make a mark on the can where the timing was. And my marks are going to be on the side that the wires are on, so that I can make sure that the side that the wires are on get lined up back over here. Okay, there we go. There's the end bell, and I don't see any shims on that side. Alright, a couple washers on the armature. Let's pull that out of its can here. Alright, now those things definitely need to be cleaned. There's a lot of gunk and dirt on it. Now, I cannot quite see down in the can, but alright, so here's the armature. There are some shims over here on this side, and there's one over here. I'm just going to leave those on for the moment right now while we continue taking apart the motor. Now that I've gotten it mostly taken apart, I think it is time to clean it. I'm just going to use some electronics contact cleaner for this. Spray out the motor can and spray the end bell clean. I will be oiling the bearings once I do that, of course, but there's a ton of gunk in there that needs to get all sprayed out, so that sounds like a good idea. Keep in mind, this isn't necessarily an instructional video, this is just what I'm doing, so food for thought. So here's my contact cleaner. It is plastic safe, which is good, and I've gone ahead and put some gloves on and safety glasses because I don't fancy getting this stuff on my hands or in my eyes. So I'm just gonna spray everything out, essentially. Actually, looks like it does a pretty darn good job. I am almost surprised. Alright, there we go. There's the motor can nice and clean. Move on and do the rest. Alright, there we go, nice and clean, and finally I'm going to go take this outside and just blow it dry with some compressed air. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily reassemble this. And I'm going to align it up with the marks that I made. Okay, there we go. So I've temporarily reassembled this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the brush hoods. So what we're doing right now, what we're going to do is actually make sure that the can and brush hoods are aligned to each other. So I'm just going to loosen them a little bit and take our brush hood alignment tool here and stick it through the brush hoods. And then we're going to grab one of our motor shafts out of the box and stick it through both the hood alignment tool and the can. Actually, that one's a little bit tight, so let's grab the shaft instead. Oh yeah, much better. Alright. So essentially what we're doing right now is we're setting up a reference. So I've got this tool going straight through this way, and I have a motor shaft in there as well. So now that that is currently aligned, I'm just going to tighten my brush hoods back down. Actually, this one I think feels a little bit stripped out, but we'll roll with it. Yeah, and it still feels like it's mostly aligned. Perfect. So now we know that this is aligned and that our brushes are going to be perfectly perpendicular to our commutator. Alright, so now we get to the fun part. We actually get to turn the commutator on this armature. I've got my Team Orion Darren's Quickset lathe here hooked up to my variable power supply just behind the camera. And the reason I've got it set up like this is because the BEC, as you guys know, did not end up working out very well. So, first thing, now we can remove our spacers from each side of the motor, keeping track of which side they're on. And then we can set this into the lathe. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the stops on either side so that we have about 10/1000ths of play. It doesn't have to be exact, but you get a feel for about how much play is required. Screw that in. Snug that up. There's just a little bit of play, back that off a hair. I'd say that's pretty good. So now that we've got that set, I'm going to grab a drive O-ring here and loop it onto the armature and wrap it onto the pulley that's on the motor. So now when we turn the motor on, this will spin. And the final thing we want to do, move this over here. Final thing we want to do is grab some comb cutting fluid. And we're not going to actually put it on the comb, we are going to put it on the shafts. We're going to put it on the shafts, or the shaft on either side, to make sure that it is well lubricated. Because we don't want to be scratching into our shaft or destroying the supports on either side. So there we go. Now we can go ahead and start cutting. So let's go over what we're going to be doing once we turn on the lathe. So first thing we are going to do is we're going to mark the comb with black Sharpie so we can see when we start cutting. Then we are going to move the bit over to the comb, and we're going to push the bit in until we see a copper line start to form in the black Sharpie. And that'll tell us that we've contacted. Then as soon as we do that, we will back the bit this way across, and then we will take our cut moving all the way across the comb. Now I did actually forget that I need to set one of my stops, and that stop is, there's a screw down here I forgot to set that. That is important. Now this process is rather familiar to me because I turn brake rotors at my internship. So this whole process is not that foreign to me, which is nice. So there we go. That'll stop over there. And we can get going. Very nice. Alright, there we go. Now that we have a nicely turned comb, go ahead and take this thing off the lathe. Undo the little O-ring, pull the comb out, set that aside, push the lathe away. Now that took quite a while to cut that comb because of how worn it was. So if I'd have been servicing this more regularly, I would not have had to cut nearly as much off, anywhere near as much off for that matter, because it took a while. And then also I would have been done a lot quicker, but you know, when I backed the bit, when I was gonna pull the bit back a little bit, I accidentally pushed it in and created a bigger gouge, so that was a problem. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to take the back, we're not going to use the tip, we're going to use the back of an X-Acto knife to clean any gunk out of the gaps between the comb segments. Because there is dirt, there is shavings, there's all sorts of gunk down in there, and you want to make sure it's nice and clean. Go. I'd say that's pretty good. Put this away. Wipe that off again. And now we are going to take a ballpoint pen and we're going to run it in the grooves of the, or run it in the gaps in the comb to ease over the burrs that were created from the lathe. This is one thing that I forgot to put in my lathe box. I forgot to stick a ballpoint pen in there, but there we go. Now we can just wipe this off. Very nice. We can stick the shims back on. Both sides here. And we are almost ready to reassemble this motor. Last thing I'm going to do before we can reassemble the motor is I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the bearings. Got some Team Trinity Petrol Motion Super Light Oil. And we'll just apply a little bit to the bearings. That'll keep them running nice and smooth. There we go. That done. Put the oil away. Can now go ahead and reassemble this motor. So we'll put the armature into the can first. It's a little bit tricky. And then we will take and find our marks. They were like this. I'm gonna have to go over a little bit. Or wait, those weren't our marks were over there. Right. There we go. Now we can push that down, turn this thing over. Wait, maybe not. There we go, just like that. Grab our driver, tighten down the end bell. Nice and snug. And we can, alright, there we go, and we can take and put our brushes back in. Since we know that the brush hoods are aligned, we can put them back into their brush hoods. And then grab our positive spring, put it on the positive side. Gotta put it in the, slip it into the brush hood first, and then you can hook the spring on. Same for the negative side. Spring in the hood, spring on the post, and push it around and loop it on. There we go. There's the motor fully rebuilt. I think all that's left is, let's see, I'm going to solder on some bullets to this and we'll come back and give it a test. Alright, time to test the motor. I got my bullets soldered on there. I've got my power supply hooked up right now. And there we go. Nice. Alright, let's switch it around. Make sure it runs backwards too. So that's always important. Awesome. Alright, there we go. There's our motor service completed. The brushes have stopped sparking, which is good. So I'd say we're done here. So, thank you all so much for watching, for tagging along with me in my motor service adventures, and my motor lathe adventures for that matter too. So, yeah, that's actually kind of cool. I'm sure this is probably a much better motor than it was when we started. So, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Make sure you leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and comment down below what you think, if a motor lathe sounds like something fun that you would try. And follow me on Instagram at highway49_RC. And I will see you in the next video. Toodles!